Well, good evening, gentlemen. If I could get your attention, please. We're going to get started this evening. Again, we welcome all of our first-time attendees to Catholic Watchmen. This is a monthly gathering of men who come together to watch for the presence of the Lord and to watch and support each other as well. As we know, we need a team on the path to heaven. And that's why Jesus, he called his 12 apostles and 72 disciples, because it's important to work together. The enemy, the devil, wants to trick us and say we're alone in the struggles we have and the challenges we encounter, but that's not true, right? We're made in the image of God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. We're made to live in community and communion with God and with others. And so that's why we come together every month for a gathering of Catholic men. Our next gathering, we typically meet the second Tuesday of the month, so January 9th is our next Catholic Watchman. And we meet usually at 6:30 until 9 p.m. But anyways, we're very grateful to welcome you here tonight. Jason agrees. Got the emails as well on your way in. Otherwise, you can grab them on the way out too, so that we can make sure that we stay in touch with all of you. Just want to do a few thank yous here before we get started. Let's thank our kitchen staff for the delicious meal that we had. And then I want to thank Jason and Todd as well for all the communications and the other organizing for tonight as well. Thank you both. We can give them a round of applause. Thank you, Jason. It is a father-son event, so my dad came tonight as well. He's sitting right over here, so grateful to have my dad here as well down from St. Michael. But without further ado, tonight we're very grateful and honored to have a wonderful fellow Catholic with us here tonight. Matt has been a great encouragement to me in my own journey of holiness as well, and I've really appreciated a lot of the ministry that we've had together, and I know that his Catholic faith is really strong, and he desires to help others be strong in the faith too. Matt, I do have a confession to make, though. Matt did make me cry. Back in 1998, when I was a fifth grader, the Vikings went 15-1 that year. They were amazing. Still have all in my dad's basement, in my parents' basement. I still have all the copies of the Star Tribune front page with the Viking win after win after win. The only game we lost that year was the Buccaneers. And then, of course, in the 98 playoffs, when we should have won the Super Bowl, we lost to the Falcons in the NFC Championship when Gary Anderson missed a field goal. So it wasn't Matt's fault, but he was on the team. So other than that, I've never been the same Vikings fan ever since. But more importantly, I have been a fan of Jesus Christ, and not just a fan, but a follower. And I'm very pleased to welcome tonight another follower of Jesus Christ, Matt Birk, up with us. Thank you. Thank you.
That's a good confession. Father Paul and I absolve you of your sins. Layman's absolution. So I have this personal policy that I have. It's when a priest calls and asks me to do something, I just say yes, right? Because it's just a lot simpler. Father Paul and I have worked a lot over the years. I think he's kind of abusing that policy of mine. No, I am just kidding. Anytime Father Paul asks me to do something, I do just say yes, not just because I should, but because I want to. Think very highly of him. You have a great pastor here. Let's keep him in our prayers too. Let's not forget to pray for all of our priests, but especially your pastor here, Father Paul, that he stays holy and healthy and happy. I think he's doing a great job, which is evidenced too here by the turnout, because I know most of you didn't come to just listen to me speak. And I know some of you have heard me speak before. Some of you said you were at the retreat back when, was that last winter or March? Yeah, it was really cold and snowy. Of course it was March. Which always makes me nervous because I don't remember what I said, but you probably don't either. So I'll just say the same thing, and you guys will be like, "Oh, it was really great," you know. Father Paul touched on something that I like to talk about. He said, we're not alone. We are definitely not alone. I think there's something in all of us that think, well, we're men. I can do this. No, that's not what we were created for. We were created for communion. And so this is really important, and this is great on a Tuesday night that so many fathers would be here and some of you would bring your sons too. That's fantastic, because this is how it's supposed to work. It's kind of like trying to eat soup with a fork. I mean, you can try all you want, but it doesn't work as well. This is what we were created for. You know, life is a team game. Our church we were created for communion, to gather. And so this is fantastic. So good for all of you. Praise the Holy Spirit for all of you, feeling the nudge and making it here tonight. So I don't know if you guys noticed, but the world's kind of a mess right now. Have you noticed? Right? I mean, we've got there's a lot going on out there, boy. And you know, we got this thing, the Twitter or the X now, and boy, we can find all sorts of stuff. Anybody on X, on the Twitter? Well, yeah, raise your hand. I mean, confession. I'm sure you got lots of confessions here every week. You can go. I'm on the Twitter. I was off it. I'm back on it. I don't know why, but you know, you can find a lot of dark stuff going on. But it's kind of crazy how you know, in our world we can't really agree on basic truths anymore. You know, things like, you know, what is a man? What is a woman? I mean, we're actually talking about that now. Institutions that we at least used to have some level of trust in. I see some gentlemen who might be slightly older than me. I'm not looking at anybody in particular, okay? I'm just saying some of you might be, but, you know, not so long ago, we had some level of trust, like in our media and in our government. I mean, now, I don't know, I think it's basically zero. You know, my wife and I sometimes just for fun will watch the news. You know, it's just, you know, because we don't watch the news. You know, we choose to be uninformed rather than misinformed. And I'll give you a second for that one. And so, but it never fails. We'll turn it on, and after like 5 minutes, I'll turn. I was like, did I miss a meeting or something? Because there was like things that you just kind of assume that are just natural law or truth, and they were that way like for a million years. And all of a sudden, like 5 minutes ago, we decided to change them. You know, just a basic semblance of not just what's right and wrong, but, you know, what's good and what's not. And then you know, the institutions that were created by God, our church and our families, there's no covert sneak attack happening anymore. It's a full frontal assault on the family and the church. So it's kind of crazy, you know, and it can get dark, and we can get down. The world's a mess. But you know what? It's always been a mess. This is nothing. I mean, this is really nothing. If you do know history, or even if you don't know history, you don't have to go too far back. Pick any time period you want. There's always been crazy. I mean, history. I mean, the history books, right? History is just really. It's not a list of historical events. History is just man trying to do things without God. That's basically what it is. Pick any time period, anything that ever happened. It's just man trying to say, no, God, we know better than you. Watch this. You know, hold my beer. Isn't that the phrase? Hold my beer. Watch this. This is nothing new. So we don't need to sit around and, you know, sulk and say, oh no, what are we going to do? First of all, nobody's job here is to save the world. Nobody. Somebody already did that. You know, he already did that 2,000 years ago. All right, so get off the cross. You know, we need the wood. All right, you don't need to go up there. All right, it's not on any one of us. None of us are going to do anything under our own human ability to fix things. Okay, and so, but you think, well, what can I do? Because there is, I think, a tendency. I think because things are kind of dark, or they can be dark, or we can find plenty of darkness, and we live in Minnesota, plenty of darkness, and literally plenty of darkness. It gets dark at like 3:15 in the afternoon right now, okay? So we can sit around, but we say, but what can I do? There's a lot we can do. You think, well, where do I start? Well, start with being Catholic. You know, we've got the best thing going. We really do, you know? We know the truth. And we're fortunate enough, all of us, to know the Catholic Church. Okay? So all we really have to do is be who God created us to be. Be followers of Jesus Christ. Not admirers, be followers of Jesus Christ. We've got the playbook. We really just have to do it. So there's two things that I kind of know, well, three things that I know sort of a lot about. I have 8 kids, so I know about that. I know a little bit about the Catholic faith, but I think the one thing I'm really an expert at is football, okay? Because I spent, like, most of my life doing that. So I'm going to tell you a football story if that's okay. It's okay. You got a Vikings shirt and a Bears jacket. Talk about confusion, huh? At least the Packers aren't in there anyway. I don't want to see your underwear, but just I guess I should ask: are there any Packers fans here? There are. All right, that's fine. That's fine. I apologize. I'll speak slower, so you guys don't get lost. And I won't use any more big words. If I use any big words, I apologize. No. People always ask me, like, well, what's it like to play in the NFL? And I mean, I played other sports growing up, but obviously I played in the NFL for a long time, so I can really only speak to that. But the first day I showed up at Vikings practice, first of all, it was really awesome because I grew up in St. Paul. I was a Vikings fan my whole life. I've been a Vikings fan my whole life, except for the 4 years I played in Baltimore. And it was great because I walked in the locker room the first day, and there's guys like Chris Carter and Randall McDaniel and John Randall and Randall Cunningham and all these great players. And like 3 months before that, I was in my dorm room cheering the Vikings on and throwing stuff at the TV at the end of the season because that's how all Vikings seasons end. And but I showed up there and I kind of thought, okay, I'm going to play in the NFL. Like, that's a pretty big mountain to climb, right? I'm going to play in the NFL, right? Well, how are you going to do that? Well, I was like, I'm just going to show up and do it. I'm just going to, I was a big fan of, power of positive thinking, right? I'm just going to show up and do it because I just really want it bad enough, and I really want it to happen, and I'm going to work hard, whatever that means. And so I'm thinking, I'm just going to show up and do it, right? It's going to be me. And so went out for that first practice, and my first play in the NFL, I had to block John Randall, okay? John Randall, who at the time was the greatest, he was the best defensive lineman in the NFL at the time. And I was thinking, they called the play, we broke the huddle, I went up to the line of scrimmage, and I was like, this is great. I am going to lock John Randall down, because I want to be an NFL player. I want to play in the NFL, and John's the best, so this is awesome, right? I got this. And, when the ball was snapped, I came out, and as an offensive lineman, you want to punch the defensive lineman in his chest. You want to punch him, and then you want to grab onto him, okay? You don't want to hold onto him. You want to grab onto him. Doesn't sound like much of a difference, but there's like a 10-yard difference between grabbing and holding, okay? So I'm thinking to myself, I'm not just going to punch John Randall in his chest. I'm like, I'm going to punch John Randall so hard that my hands potentially could go through his chest and come through his back, okay? Like, that's how hard I was going to punch John Randall. And so the ball was snapped, and I came out, and I punched as hard as I could. But I closed my eyes because I was super scared. Like, when the rubber meets the road, I was scared of John Randall. John Randall is a bad man. YouTube the guy. He's crazy. He'd paint his face, and he'd walk around. He's barking like a dog. The guy's not well, right? And so when I punched, and I didn't feel anything. And that's a really bad feeling as an offensive lineman, right? And when I opened my eyes, John was no longer here. He was, like, here, on his way to the quarterback. So it went from being the greatest play in the history of the NFL to a lookout block. Look out! So anyways, I was like, oh, my gosh. And after my first practice, I was like, I can't do this. I was like, these guys are bigger, they're faster, they're stronger. Like I can't do this. I played football at Harvard, you know. I mean, it's a little different playing Princeton versus John Randall, you know. I was lost. I was walking off the field like dejected, saying, well, thank God I got my degree because I'm not cut out for this. And Mike Tice came over to me. We were walking off the field, and he says, he's like, look, it didn't go well for you out there. And I was like, you think? And he says, yeah, I was playing tackle at the time. Tackles where the really good guys play. He's like, look, have you ever played center? And I said, no, I've never played center in my life. And he's like, well, we're going to try to make you a center because that's about the only chance you got. And so the second practice that day, he said, be out practice early. And I was out there like 20 minutes early. And 5 minutes before practice started, the quarterbacks came out, and we just practiced snapping the football. I'd never snapped a football in my life other than just messing around, right? It's real easy. You just bend over, you put your hand on the ball. Quarterback puts his hands underneath you. It takes a little getting used to now, okay? And you just practice snapping the football. Now, has anybody ever watched an NFL game and thought, oh my gosh, how does the center do that? That is amazing how he snaps the football to the quarterback. Every game, you're just like, man, why don't they pay the centers more money? That looks really hard. No, you've never said, what an amazing snap. But you have said, what a horrible snap. And you've probably thrown in a few other words there extra too, if it's the Viking center or Bears or whoever you're rooting for, sir. Okay? Right? But that day and every single day for 15 years, I went out to practice 5 minutes early and practiced snapping the football to the quarterback. Because it's that important, right? Like, you can have the greatest play in the history of the world called against the perfect defense. If the quarterback doesn't get the ball, it doesn't matter, right? And you practice it every day because when you get into a game situation, when the bullets are live, which there's no bullets, but we like to talk tough in football. When the bullets are live and there's this nose tackle across from you, you know, who lines up like this far from your face. And by the way, they call him a nose tackle. That's like the most misinformed name ever for a position in sports. The nose tackle never makes any tackles. They don't even tell him to try to tackle the guy. The nose tackle only exists for one reason, to destroy the center. That's all he does. He wakes up every day and he says, I just got to destroy the center. And the guy is always, he's this far from your face and you can smell his breath. And he weighs like 350 pounds. And he's always got some nickname like Tiny or Bubba or something like that. And the guy, and he's sitting there, and you know what? When you're in Lambeau Field or wherever, and you know the lights are on, and it's 3rd and 10 or whatever you got going, that's when you're really glad that you practiced snapping the football every single day. Because I'm not thinking about that in that moment. I'm thinking about how am I going to stop this guy who's got a bad attitude and a short rap sheet? How am I going to stop him from getting to the quarterback, right? But we do that every single day. And then after that, in practice, they blow the whistle, and then everybody breaks up into their position groups, and the linemen always get sent down into the corner, and we get in these things called chutes. You know, just kind of these metal contraptions that you get in your stance, and you got to come out, and in the chute, you have to stay low. I mean, yes, we are cattle. We're basically cattle, okay? It's like a cattle. You got to stay low, because if you rise up too high, then you hit your head on one of the bars. But when you're playing offensive line, leverage is everything. Doesn't matter how big and strong you are. If you don't stay low, you're gonna get blown off the ball. We would do that, and then we would do. Then we practice on these things. We called them boards. They were boards, 10-foot long, 1.5 wide boards. We'd straddle them, and we'd get in our stance, and we'd come out. And you got to keep your feet. You got to keep a base when you're on the board. If you get your feet together, you know, you step on the board. If you get your feet together on a football field, that's when you get knocked over, right? You got to keep a base. Now, I'm pretty sure they've been doing that for like 100 years in football. I mean, I coach middle school football. We do that stuff. High school football does it. I've been to colleges. They do it. And the NFL does it. I'm pretty sure there's no, like, higher level than the NFL, right? Like, that's the best of the best. And we do the exact same drills that my middle school team does. Why? Because the fundamentals never, ever change, right? What changes is the attention that we pay to them. Now, Father Paul's going to close his eyes. Okay, I'm going to ask people to raise their hands. Anybody ever gotten bored during Mass? Everyone who raised their hands, they said specifically not during the homily. Just so you know, that's what they said, okay? Right? But, right? Why? Because you've done it a lot, right? Human nature to say, I know this, I got this, what's next, this and that. No. Like, the fundamentals, that's it. That's it. It doesn't matter that you've done them 10 million times before. What matters is that you're doing them again. That's what matters. Yeah, I played with a lot of guys who are great football players, a lot of guys who are in the Hall of Fame now, who are going to be in the Hall of Fame someday. Were they talented? Yeah, I mean, did they have a lot of talent? Yeah. But you know what? Talent in the NFL is really, really cheap. Like, there's a lot of guys that run 4.3 40s. They're not in the NFL. There's a lot of guys that are 300 pounds, bigger, stronger, faster than me. Not as good looking, but they didn't play in the NFL. They tried, but they couldn't. Every great player I ever played with was maniacal about mastering the fundamentals. Football is not one of those sports where you go out there on your own and just say, well, what do I feel like doing today? You know, like, how do I feel like blocking? No. It's like you get in your stance. If you're a center, you snap that football. You come off low. You put your face where it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be middle of the play side number on this play. It's supposed to be down the midline. It's supposed to be, I mean, everything is like, there's no making it up as you go along. And the only way that you're able to do that is because you did the fundamentals over and over and over and over again. And so I guess the point is, when we try to figure out what are we supposed to do, right? What is each and every one of us called to? Because we are called to build the kingdom of God here on earth, right? Well, let's start with practicing our faith. So we're ready for those opportunities that present themselves that God puts in our life. That we're ready when those opportunities arise. It might be as a husband. It might be as a father. It might be to evangelize somebody. Whatever it is. So we're ready when that happens. That we've trained ourselves. I mean, the great thing about the Catholic faith is, well, there's a couple great things. Probably more than a couple, okay? But a couple that I can relate to. Number one, we have a set of fundamentals that we can practice, right? I mean, obviously, we can go to Mass every day if we want to. We can go to Mass. We've got confession. We've got the rosary. We've got adoration. We've got the saints. We've got the Hall of Fame of Catholics, right, that we can look to. I mean, who when they were a little kid, or if you're a little kid now, who looks up to certain athletes, right? And you're like, I will be just like that guy when I'm older. Do you? Who's your favorite athlete? Don't know much about sports? I'm putting my money on you, man. Sometimes that's the problem when you call on people live. You get someone that doesn't like sports. That's all right. When I was a kid, it was Michael Jordan, right? Like, you like look at I want to be like that when I grow up. Well, now we can look at the stories of the saints are amazing, right? We can say that's what it looks like. We do all these drills, and when I was a rookie, it's like I'm doing these drills. It's like I'm doing these footwork drills. I'm doing these hand drills. It was kind of like, it's sort of like Karate Kid, the first Karate Kid, the good one, And Miyagi has him painting the fence, and he's got him waxing the cars, and he's saying, you're not teaching me anything, right? And then he shows him. He starts throwing punches at him. It was kind of like we're doing these fundamental drills. It's like, I don't know how all these go together. I'm just trying to do these drills right and not fall over and not get yelled at and not get made fun of by Randall McDaniel or Todd Stussy or Corey Stringer. You're just trying to figure out. And then we'd go into the meeting rooms, and you'd watch film of practice. I remember Mike Tice would always say, when one of the really good guys did it, he'd say, that's what it looks like. When you put it all together, that's what it looks like. And so kind of like, to me, like that's really hopeful, right? Like, keep practicing these things over and over and over again. And maybe someday, maybe they'll all come together. That's really encouraging. Because a lot of times, I don't know how you guys feel, but my spiritual life, it's, there's peaks and there's valleys too, right? There's times when it's dry. And you kind of think, well, what am I doing? How does this? You just keep doing it. We can just keep going back to that over and over and over again. And then here's the really good news. It doesn't take any talent to be Catholic. Thank God, right? Thank God. It takes zero talent. All we have to do is show up, right? Like, isn't that awesome? Isn't that absolutely fantastic? All we got to do is show up, right? Like that. I mean, I was a low talent guy in the NFL. I mean, just show up. I can do that, and it's all laid out there for you. It's all laid out there for us in our church. What a great blessing. And then lastly, I'd say this: we trying to figure out what are we supposed to do. I don't know about you guys, but I'll say for me, sometimes I think, well, I got to do something big, right? I don't know. I got big things like right in front of me sometimes that I forget about, like my wife, like my kids, like my parents. It's not like I have to worry about these huge systemic problems going on in the government. I mean, I tried to fix that last year, but everyone's like, people come up to me still. I mean, today, people come up, hey, I voted for you last year. I was like, only once? Well, that's why we lost. So, my apologies, Father Paul. Just trying to be funny, not political. I think if you think about it, we all got plenty to do right in front of us. I think it was Mother Teresa, St. Teresa of Calcutta. If not, let's give her credit. She said, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. Ultimately, men, fathers, right? Like, I don't know if it's our number one job, but one of the main jobs I think that God gave us was help our wives and our kids get to heaven. Yeah. I mean, our wife, it wasn't totally random that we ended up with her, okay? God, when he created her and he created you, he knew you two were going to get together. He wants you to return his daughter's soul to him someday in heaven. And these kids that you have, that I have, they're not our kids. They're God's kids. Right? He entrusted them to us while we're here on earth. He wants them to be with him in heaven someday too. So if you think about that, well, that's a lot. You got plenty to do, yeah? We don't have to sit around and wonder and lament and complain, although I am like elite at complaining. Trust me, elite, especially when I get around some of my buddies and we want to chop it up a little bit. Man, I can complain with world class, 10-time Super Bowl champion complainer, right? Which maybe is therapeutic once in a while. But we have plenty to do. And so let's not, and you know what, as Catholics too, the one thing I'm really proud to say that I'm Catholic is, Catholics do. We are doers. We're probably not great speakers or we can, some of us have the gifts to evangelize others, and that's great. I don't know, it's a tricky one, and I'm not talking about that. But point is this: like, as a whole, as a church, as a people, we just kind of show up and do things. Get it done, performing the corporal works of mercy, feeding the hungry, caring for the sick, visiting the elderly, those types of things. We just kind of do it, right? I mean, I got buddies who aren't Catholic. I mean, they're not perfect. And, yeah, thanks, Father. I lived in Florida for a couple years when I retired, because that's what you do when you retire. You move to Florida. And some buddies who were Baptists, which was hilarious to me. And I'm not going to rag on Baptists too much. But, first of all, they weren't supposed to drink, but they'd be over my house having a beer every weekend. I'm like, you guys should be Catholic because you drink like Catholics. But they say, well, why are you Catholic, this and that? I'm like, do you know that the Catholic Church has cared for more sick people? We built more hospitals, built more schools, feed more hungry people every day than anybody, including the government. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that, right? We don't do a great job drawing attention to ourselves, which is good because we shouldn't. But I just feel like as Catholic, it's kind of part of who we are, and I don't think it's a coincidence that we do, and we're already, I mean, all of you, you're already doing it. But maybe it's time to just think about it, take it to prayer, and think, maybe I can up my game just a little bit more. Maybe God's asked me to up my game just a little bit. Maybe this is what these times call for, especially if you really feel like, things are going awry, that the world's going to end, I mean, all this stuff. Maybe that's God just saying, okay, maybe you can do just a little bit more. And for each and every one of us, we can figure out what that is. In football, no one's ever played the perfect game, ever. Has never happened, even though they'll say, oh, he had a perfect quarterback rating. I mean, you tell me how a scale of up to 158.3 works, okay? By definition, I mean, who came up with that, right? That's like worse than the Dewey Decimal System. Young people don't get the Dewey Decimal System. But you know what? Like, and as an offensive lineman, you kind of live a tortured existence because 60 or 70 plays in a game, you could have 65 great plays, but I never slept after a game ever because I was always thinking about the 5 bad plays. And you could have 69 great plays, and if that last play you gave up a sack and the game ended, you played a horrible game, or at least you felt like you did as an offensive lineman. Kind of same as a quarterback, you throw the ball over the field, well, ask Kirk Cousins. He played great. He throws a pick on the last drive, and everyone's like, oh, we got to get rid of this guy. But as a player, like, you can always feel like you can do more, right? And normally as a football player, when the next day when you watch the film of the game, and you like the good plays, you're like, oh, yeah, that was good. But then when the bad plays came, you're like, ugh. And whenever you watch the mistakes you made as a football player, you could always trace it back to a breakdown in fundamentals. I mean, yeah, the other guys, they're good. They get paid too. I mean, you give them credit, but there was never a situation that presented itself where, coach just said, well, I don't know what to tell you. You just can't stop that. No, we were equipped to stop everything. It always came down to a breakdown in fundamentals, which is why you'd get beat. And so as a football player, you kind of get this, I'll call it a tortured existence, but it's good because you always feel like I can do better. And, I mean, if you guys are here on a Tuesday night, you're serious. You're serious about your faith. You're serious about life. You're serious about it. So that's good. But we can, that's a good thing. I'm sure you're very, very critical of yourselves too, and that's good to a point. But don't be overly critical of yourself, right? If you were exactly the person that God made you to be, like if you were operating at that level, then you wouldn't need God, right? He'll close the gap. He's going to be the one that closes the gap. Don't beat yourselves up too much. Just use that as motivation to say, I can do more, I can do better. But at the end of the day, guys, it's all right in front of us. I mean, how blessed are we to be Catholic, right? It's an amazing thing, and praise be to God for our church, and praise be to God for each other, because you do need teammates. We all need teammates. Nobody's done it alone. Even I didn't win the 2012 Super Bowl on my own. My teammates did help a lot, actually. So it's good. So I'm going to speak a little bit later, but for now, that's it. God bless you, and thank you.
With the Advent season just starting too, it's a short season this year. It's only 3 weeks and 1 day. But this is a season of preparation. Preparation and working on those fundamentals, just like the preseason for football. This Advent is a preseason, in a sense, for Christmas and having God's presence with us. So just we're going to take about 10, 15 minutes now at the table. to have some table discussion, maybe just to share a highlight or something that struck you from the talk, and then maybe to share what's one of the fundamentals that you want to work on in this Advent season. Maybe it's daily prayer, maybe it's getting to confession, maybe it's speaking positively, maybe it's temperance and fasting, giving up either some meat one day a week or certain drink, or choosing not your favorite meal when you go out to eat. Just to share, again, working on that self-control. I invite you to have some table discussion now, reflecting on what fundamentals is the Lord inviting you to work on, and then also share some graces or some insights from the talk. Okay? Again, so we'll take 15 minutes. I'll come back up here about 6:50 and give us our next directions.